Whatever.
What is going on?
What's going on, everybody? Do us a favor. Rev up that like button for us. That's the new way we're saying it now, instead of saying smash that like button.
Yeah.
You like that? I actually don't really.
Yeah.
So smash that like button for us.
I mean, since you're sitting right here, I'll say yes, and then behind your back, I'll say no.
Yeah, it is Wednesday night, so feeling good on a Wednesday. Yeah. What's everybody up to tonight? We got a really fun Gear and Beer tonight. Shawn is obviously here. He's up here for our Christmas party and for just general hanging out and looking at new stuff that we're working on and giving input on.
Yeah.
And we have a really special guest tonight. We have all the way from California, Jeff Schroeder.
Yeah.
From the Smashing
Hey. How you guys doing?
Yeah. We were like, neither of us know any pumpkin songs. I mean, you learned Beguiled, but
Yeah.
So in other words, I don't know any pumpkin songs. So I was like, I can play Tush. It's close, right?
I don't know.
It's kind of in the same family.
Yeah. Like
It's on the family tree somewhere.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, clearly when I think of the Pumpkins, I think it's ZZ Top.
Oh yeah,
like
Billy Gibbons,
like same level.
Yeah.
I mean,
well,
they're like one and the same.
It's just two Billies.
Yeah, it's true.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You know, actually, Billy Gibbons did come to a show one time. And
Nice.
He came backstage and he, didn't really. I mean, he was really cool in his funny self, but he really wasn't. I don't think overly impressed with Billy or I as guitar players, but Jimmy Chamberlain, he just looked at Jimmy, our drummer, and just said, "Lord have mercy."
Nice.
Like just because I really appreciated his musicianship. So that was the only time, but he was totally cool.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's awesome.
So cool, man.
Yeah. So it's Gear and Beer. So we got some beers. We're going to talk about gear. We're going to talk with Jeff about his rigs, about just what shit everybody's into. So you guys tell us where you are tonight in the comment section. Any questions you have for us, we'll try to get to them. So hit us up with any questions and let us know what you guys are drinking. I've got my tried, tested, true Steigl Radler because as everybody knows that watches this, I like juice instead of beer.
Like carbonated fruit juice. Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh, this is Northern Brown. I'm
Nice.
not familiar with it. Stone Angel Brewing.
Yeah.
Oh.
Is that Winnipeg? Anybody know? Yeah. So it's local.
It's
They're
local.
feeding
Nice.
you local beers.
Ooh, nice.
Yeah. Luke's trying to get you all banged up on that while you're here. So, is what it is. We got a couple of guys like kind of in the background here and just hanging out. So Luke is on cameras tonight because Stobes isn't here. For anybody who knows him, Manny's on audio. And then we got Hoogie is hanging out, our AR guy. Mm-hmm. And then Scotty, my brother, is hanging out, making sure that his son doesn't drink too much while he works tonight. So, just having a good time. So, and Jeff, you met Scott.
Yes.
We were in,
there you are. Good to see you again. He probably can't. I don't know if he can see me, but I can see you.
I can see. Yeah, I can see you, Jeff. Good to see you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. We got
that's right. Your dad.
Sam's drinking a single malt scotch. Nice.
Ooh. We were trying to drink bourbon earlier today, and Sam tapped out like literally like 2 tiny sips in. He was like, Can I
get some any mix? This? Yeah.
It's funny, Derek, because I went out today and I went to Bevmo, which is out of kind of a liquor warehouse kind of store in the US.
Nice.
And I wanted Steigl Radler because that's what I
Nice.
wanted to get, but they didn't have any. So I got this Paulaner or whatever.
Paul,
great,
yeah, that's a good one too.
grapefruit red. And I mean, it tastes the same to me.
Yep.
So I mean, I don't know. I'm not, but it's nice. So we're on the same page tonight.
Right.
I did in no way, shape, or form did I give Jeff any money or any cue.
He did not.
But
I'm just trying to kiss up to him.
I was gonna say I feel so justified in my love of like.
Shawn told me. He told me. He said, if you want to really get in his good graces,
do not set Derek off and show up with anything but a Canadian or something, a rattler of some sort. Yeah, some point.
Nice. Well, cheers everybody, and thanks for hanging. So, so. I guess we should talk about we have a little contest running right now too. If you guys see it on Instagram and Facebook, that's going to go till later on in the show. So we asked everybody a question where they could win one of our demo pedals that we have kicking around the shop. And the question that we asked everybody was, what band did Jeff replace Shawn in, or did you fill guitar duties in after Shawn left? So if you find that on our Facebook, Instagram, whatever it is, just comment. To be honest, you could probably comment on the stream here too, and it would be good. But let's talk about when you guys first met, because you guys have had, kind of a history.
Well,
I just met Jeff, really like a month ago.
Yeah.
I mean, wow, it's been, Shawn, actually close to 30 years. You can believe that.
Oh yeah.
I mean, like.
Yeah.
So you guys met when you were 8.
Exactly.
You both look like you're under 40.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah, I wish.
Well, as not to give it away, because said band that I I wouldn't say I replaced Shawn. Technically, yes. I mean, I think the band was looking for Shawn had left the band, from what I understand. Yeah, and so they needed somebody, and
I left because they found out that Jeff Schroeder was looking for a gig.
Definitely
not. I don't do a chance.
Definitely not. I mean, I actually just graduated high school that June, and so I was a kid. I was a kid, and but I had known the band and I had seen the band play live with you, quite a few times. And so I was very familiar with it. But the reason I ended up getting introduced to the band, the first was is because Dave Koval was living with Michael and Lonnie at the time. And he had been my guitar teacher when I was a kid. And then when I graduated high school, I ran into him somewhere. And then I decided, I'll start taking lessons again. But we did him at the house, at the apartment. And so Michael, who was the singer of the band, was, shared a room with Dave. And so after I left, apparently one day, Michael went to Dave. He's like, who are you playing with today? And he's like, oh, it's, Jeff. And he's, basically he cut, and then he was like, oh, I'd like to get in touch with him, kind of thing. And so that's how that all worked out.
Yeah. Yeah, because I'm trying to remember, because it is that long ago. What band were you in? When parallel with the Violets?
None. I mean, I had some high school cover bands, like jamming in the garage kind of thing. I'd never been in a real band that played clubs or anything.
Yeah, because I couldn't remember, man. I was like,
no, I wasn't around town playing. No, definitely not.
Because it seemed like you were in one of the other Christian bands, in parallel at some point. Okay.
No, I wasn't. I was not. Yeah, just like I said, I just graduated high school and was kind of figuring out what to do, and so I was lucky in that I was able to join an established band and kind of be thrown into the fire, and then literally by that fall, whatever, I was playing all these clubs in LA and Hollywood and really got to cut my teeth and being a band, like I said, a professional level band, and with great players like your brother, Lonnie and Michael. And, really learned so much, I learned so much in that band that, skills and listening skills and playing skills, like how to fit into an ensemble. in
Yeah.
that situation. And I realized like, wow, how lucky I was.
Yeah. Well, and that was the thing in that band is he would do something different pretty much every night.
Yeah.
So you'd have to keep up with him.
Well, and it's funny, like the template of the band is similar in that, a singer-songwriter who's writes guitar-based writer, and then like really good drummer. You know what I mean? So,
Oh yeah.
and then as your role as a secondary guitar player is to color what's kind of going on, and
right.
So that type of dynamic was really, like I said, really beneficial at such an early age.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. I like that Robbie Timms wins the comment section so far tonight with his comment about how old were you, Shawn, when Jeff kicked you off the team.
No, Shawn, I didn't get Shawn quit the team before he even knew I existed.
Oh man. That's awesome.
But we never met then. The reason we met is because I was in the band. And then soon after that, Shawn and his two brothers, Scott and Lonnie, all kind of opened that Costa Mesa location of the Mesa Boogie store.
Yeah.
And
that would have been called Think Music at the time. And was it the one that there were two? Was it the one that was by Guitar Center or the one that was?
No, it's like by Bristol or so. It's kind of by the mall. Yeah. It was just a Mesa Boogie store.
Yeah, that's when we turned it into Mesa Boogie.
Yeah.
Right on, yeah.
And that's true. I probably met you before that, but we'd go down there all the time to look at stuff. Yeah. And borrow amps for our demos and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
That was right when the dual rectifier came out.
Yep. Yeah, it would have been. Yeah. That and maybe was it the tremo verb?
That was a little bit afterwards. Yeah. On our very first demo that I did with the band, Lonnie brought a rectifier, and that's what we used because it sounded. I mean, we had trying to get those kind of sounds out of a distortion pedal. You know what I mean?
I know, but it's crazy. It's kind of a blur now because I'm trying to recall. Did they come and get a tremo verb later on and
later
for a while?
Later. We would use those the combo because it was a combo I think at the time.
Yeah, it was a 2x12 combo. And
heavy, heavy
as hell. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool, man.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the rectifiers. Like I used to play rectifiers when I actually played in a band and prior to being involved with Revv. And I'm still a huge fan, but like the Tremoverb is still one of those rectifiers that I always loved. I remember I'm going to say his name wrong, but like Mike Einzinger from Incubus using Tremoverbs, and they sounded just amazing. And I never got one. And I actually saw somebody selling a Rectiverb, which must be newer, that somebody local was selling when I saw it yesterday online, and I was like, I would get that, but it's not a Tremoverb. Yeah. Like, it's not going to be the right thing.
So I'm assuming that would have been a Tremoverb, just no tremolo, so they just called it the Rectoverbs. So it was probably still the 2-channel rectifier, but in a combo.
Yeah,
with reverb, but no tremolo.
This wasn't a combo. This was a head, but it was a 2-channel rectifier, which is still my favorite.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I'm.
Man, I thought I saw a Mario Axis in there somewhere. It'd be XS. I thought I saw.
Oh yeah, he might be right because I ran into him recently in Montreal. He came to the show. And we were able to say hello and finally meet face to face because over the years had used a bunch of his products and
he's a good dude. There he is.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, he actually he sent me some really cool stuff. He's got this new thing called the Unbuffer.
Yep.
And so. Like for me, I was running that Beano Boost, and so I had to run it actually on my board out front and not in my rack, which had to do a little bit of tap dancing because of course that doesn't want to see a buffered signal. Yeah. So I was so stoked when he told me, I make this thing called the Unbuffer pedal just for exactly, for people like you that need to put that in a system where it's going to see a buffered signal. So
Yeah.
amazing, and then he, also hooked me up with some new buffers too, which is great.
Yeah, no,
So he's
Mario,
buffering me and unbuffering me.
yeah, nice. Yeah, no, Mario builds good stuff, man. He goes way back with me too. Yeah,
yeah.
it's good to see you, Mario.
So that actually leads me to like one of the things that I wanted to kind of talk to you about. Like, so I'd love to know in the comment section here how many of you guys have seen either, Premier Guitar did a rig rundown with Jeff that came out I think last month, and then we did an interview with Jeff that came out like a week ago, or no, we came out on Sunday maybe, on the good old interwebs. So, if you guys have seen that, you guys have a little bit of an idea of what Jeff's live rig is like. But I'd love to know, like, what are kind of some of the pieces that you use more at home or in studio or on other gigs? Because I mean, most touring guitar players I know have completely separate live rigs from home rigs or studio rigs or whatever. Yeah.
Well, I mean, of course, I use a ton of different things. But the reason that I reached out to Revv in the first place about wanting to get one of the heads was because for recording, I was using the models of channel 3 and channel 4 in Helix.
Right.
So that's how I was introduced to those heads. But that was in a recording application. So sometimes that's kind of one, sometimes I do use, especially at early stages, demoing, writing, I'll use some type of digital modeling, the plugin or even hardware version, just trying to figure things out. But I have a pretty big collection of heads. I have, 4 kind of 70s Marshalls. So that's kind of usually for like a rock thing. I'm going to land somewhere there first for distorted guitars. I have 2 78s that I really like, that if I kind of push it with the pedal, it's pretty gained out. I can definitely play rhythm guitar and Pumpkins, records with that and live. I actually used to use them live too. At one point, I just used 2 Marshalls set kind of AC/DC and with a bunch of pedals. But usually that's kind of where I'll start for distorted stuff. Trace Davis, my tech, from Voodoo Amps is, he actually just recently built me one of his heads. And that's kind of like his take on all maybe like Jose modded kind of hot rodded Marshalls from the 80s. It's really like that kind of, I told him I wanted something that was like that, not high gain, modern high gain, but what kind of basically a metal guy would have used from like 81 to 86. You know what I mean? I wanted that kind of vibe, so it sounds like, like Rad or something, that Dawkins, that kind of, and so I use that quite a bit too. I've really liked that. On this new Pumpkins record, I actually used a lot of combos for clean stuff. Deluxe, Fender Deluxe, and believe it or not, a lot of JC 120, because there's, especially on songs that have a lot of keyboards and synthesizers, I found that kind of JC sound with the chorus and the whole deal, just really fitted in the mix, because it didn't take, you get a lot of animation and movement, but it doesn't take up a lot of space. And I think when you're dealing with, Pumpkin records tend to be pretty dense. So I think trying to find things that don't take up too much space is always key. So, and I actually just got this really cool amp too that I've been kind of using a lot. It's called a Balthazar, and Balthazar Delay was our studio tech at Billy's studio in Chicago for a long time, and he's a Chicago guy, and he just started kind of building his own amps. And so this is basically kind of a slightly modernized Selmer treble and bass. So British voice, kind of clean amp that if you kind of crank it up is really cool. And then I also, last thing, that I use a lot too is, I see you got a Karstens. You have his Grace, but I really like his Warm Machine.
Okay.
And that is an amp that to me, it's got to be dimed on 10, like the gain and the master volume. So it's it's really really loud. But
Oh,
the distortion you get from it, it's not high gain at all, but it's like a really cool. It sounds like the coolest like fuzz pedal you've ever heard, but a lot more articulate, I would say.
Oh wow, okay.
yeah, the Grace I actually bought from one of the guys who's watching tonight, Anthony Best, which I saw he commented a little bit earlier that he just ordered a new one because he had tried to buy it. I bought it from him used, and then he tried to buy it back from me, and I was like, like I'm keeping it. It's awesome, but is it ever loud? Like it is crazy loud, or I should say, it sounds best when it is crazy loud.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would love to check out some of his other stuff. I mean, I only got hip to knowing about that brand because of Billy's amp when it came out, and surprisingly, like the metal community, which I mean, I don't really play metal, but I'm in a lot of the metal Facebook groups. Obviously, I couldn't believe how much all of the metal dudes were latching onto it because I mean, I don't really think of Billy's tone as being like really, really tight and aggressive, like what most of metal players are after. So yeah.
But what he does is always after, which he's always complaining about, is not enough gain. So those he loves gain. You know what I mean? He likes, you know what I mean? So he's always looking for more. So I think those heads have a lot on tap. And so I think, that's why, and it's really tight sounding.
Yes.
And very doesn't have and I think in a good way, it doesn't have a ton of low end. So it's very clear and articulate down there. So when you can really hear all that kind of palm muting type of stuff. And I'm sure people who use extended range guitars, which we don't really, but people who do, I'm sure find it, pretty cool that way too.
Yeah, I'm also interested to back up a little bit when you're talking about your Marshalls. What wattage do you favor more? Like, are you more the 50 watt Marshalls or 100 watt Marshalls?
Unfortunately, all mine are 100, which is just because I've never been able to buy a 50 watt that came into my world that I wanted. But I do want one. But all mine are 100. But Billy actually bought KK Downing's main 50 watt Marshall, and when he put his gear up for auction, and so he actually got like the 50 watt Marshall head, and I got and I use that a lot on Sear actually, and it's wow. I mean, it really only has one good sound. Like you have to, it only sounds good distorted. Like if you try to kind of find kind of some of the mid tones or cleaner things, it's really thin and kind of annoying. But for the one jacked up sound, it's like, wow, it's so cool. The way that, especially the way that the distortion is on the lower side of things, on the low strings, it's really cool. So nice. I am, at some point, but I don't know, like if one comes into my world, but I'm not like actively hunting for a 50 watt right now, just because I actually have just too many things.
There's no such thing, Jeff.
Yeah.
It's not true.
Yeah. I need something like that, I mean, at home, because I do end up doing a lot of recording here now, and it's just switching out heads. It's like, oh my gosh, it's just, you just tend to, want to choose things that are the most useful.
Right. Yeah. Now, are you using just modeling, or are you able to mic up at that place?
Oh, I use heads, but I either use the aux or the Captor X.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah, because that's pretty much the position I'm in too. I've got like scads of heads, and it's great because I can switch through them like on an Ampete switcher.
Yeah,
and I've got it set up. I've got a cab mic'd up, but I can't use it, so I end up using the aux.
I know. I mean, I live in a house, but I mean, my neighbors it's LA. My neighbors are close. They wouldn't be.
Oh yeah,
they wouldn't be happy if I was, because those Marshalls. If I do use them, I have them up. I have the volumes up really high on those heads to get the sound. Yeah, to get the sound, and I mean, I've really kind of say I can't complain about the the like using something like the Captor X or the Aux. I found the tones to be really, really convincing.
Oh yeah, and the feel is too. Like for me, I tend to lean
Yeah.
towards the aux, but that because I'm always using a Roy and a 57. It's what I've used for
Yeah.
years, and I just pick like the 4x12 cab that I basically kind of Marshall-esque 4x12 cab V30s, and that, I mean that's what I'm always using anyways. So when I found it in the aux, I was like, man, this is probably, I would say it's 75% there, 75,
Yeah.
80% there, especially in a track. It's like, yeah, it sounds great. And then when I can, I'll mic it up. I've got a oversized like Friedman 2x12 now that just has just has the or not Friedman, but sorry, Bogner 2x12.
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah, it just has a couple V30s in it that I use all the time. So when I can, there's something about that amount of, it's just all I can describe it as is air. It's like eventually someone's going to nail that math too. But yeah, I'm perfectly happy, just banging amps into an aux and done,
Yeah, and I actually recently got the Rupert Neve, the Shelford mic pre.
Oh, nice.
And it's got that silk button, which is like a kind of tape. I think it's supposed to be like kind of a tape compression kind of thing. And I gotta say, that's kind of like that magic touch. I think you kind of get some of that stuff that you would maybe miss from like miking actual cab. I really feel like it's really, when I send stuff to people, especially since I've gotten a lot of like, hey man, wow, these tracks sound great. I actually did something recently where I used the Generator 120 and then through that with just the two notes, and like the engineer wrote back, he's like, oh my God, what'd you use? These tracks sound amazing. So yeah. I mean, those little things I think really help,
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
No, that's killer. I mean, I still just got that Chandler TGI too. I've had that thing forever now.
Yeah.
And it's killer. It's just wide open sounding. I did try the aux into that. And I was like, nah, I'll probably find something else if I'm gonna, route signal that way. But yeah, that's the ticket, especially that Shepherd's killer.
Yeah, actually, in live I use that retrospect. It's like a two tube DI kind of thing, and I gotta say it's really pretty amazing. I'm going to bring it home and try it for recording because it really feels awesome under the fingers. It really, it kind of, even though you have the in-ears on, it really kind of felt like, wow, like I'm playing it through a cab again or something.
Right. Yeah.
I can hear the cab. It's something that whatever it does with the harmonics, really nice. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It's like this kind of harmonic complexity that just kind of adds to the feel. Yeah. When I saw you were using those, I was like, oh, that's smart. Just run.
Yeah. Well, I just feel like it's like one last time to go analog again, right?
Yep. That's true. Yeah. Analog, digital, analog, digital.
Yeah.
It
kind of rounds the sound. Yeah. It does.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Nice. Dan's here. Also, I see that
hey, Dan.
Jeff, you haven't met Dan, but he's commenting. Jeff is our president and designer who designs all of our stuff. And yeah.
No, nice to meet you, Dan, over through the comment section. Thank you for designing such incredible amps.
I also see Justin Bryan's been like trying to flog his 70s Marshalls that are like Yingwei stuff to you here. Justin's our good buddy over at Two Notes for those of you guys.
Oh yeah.
Justin, you should tell me what you want for those 70s Marshalls. You don't need to worry about telling Jeff about that.
I actually have a 72. I do, but it's not dead stock. It's actually highly modified. I bought it from this guy in Oklahoma, and it was, I don't know for sure, but he told me, he claims it was like an early Dave Friedman modded head. So it's pretty high. It's rocking. It sounds really good, but I don't know. I should take it over to Dave and have him verify if it's actually one of his.
Early heads. Yeah, that'd be fun. Yeah.
I've got a couple of 70s Marshalls that are not stock and 180s Marshall that isn't stock. Actually, I think that combo might be stock. The JMP combo.
Yeah, that's not out here, is it?
Yeah, that's what that cabinet is there.
Oh, right on. Oh, it's underneath.
But
gotcha.
Was that one of those 212 JMP combos? Those sound awesome. Those are really cool.
Yeah, it's really great. I don't know if you can see it or where it is. It's up there in the corner if you can see it. I don't know if they can see that. Anyway, I have a 7250 watt JMP and then a 82 JCM 800 50 watt or 76 50 watt and 82.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, there it is.
Yeah, it's killer. And I've had like the 100 watt JMPs and I have one still, and I've had the 100 watt JCM 800s, and I prefer the 50s over the 100s because I like more saturation at lower volume because I can't play properly. So Sean's like, we need 100 watt, and I'm like, I can't play 100 watts.
Well, that's the thing. It's like I get the 50 watt thing, but I like the headroom, and if you can handle the volume, there's something about the dynamics of 100 watts and the bigger transformers, and there's just something about that. I get the 50 watt thing, and they do feel different. But yeah, for me, I'm always like, if I can figure out like how to get the 100 watt through a cab in the right room, so long as I'm not standing in same said room.
Yeah. The way they throw low end is I think much different, and I think you get that little tighter thing with the 100 watts.
Yeah, absolutely.
Little quicker response.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's a cool thing.
I'll take those 50s that sag real nice, and then can hide every mistake I make. It's much easier. So I mean, for everybody who's seen the rig rundown that Premier Guitar did, and I guess for everybody who hasn't, go watch that when we're done the stream. Let's talk about how your rig has evolved kind of over the years, like from kind of, from starting, back in Violet Burning days to now.
Oh,
like,
gosh.
Yeah.
It was, because I think I started playing at a time when, and you guys, may kind of relate that when I really started taking guitar seriously, it was like the mid 80s, and pedals weren't really a thing.
Right.
I mean, no one, you'd see whatever people have, maybe a couple boss, but but I wanted effects. And so when I started before I even had a pedal, I actually got a rack unit, a Digitech GSP5 that was kind of multi-effects unit.
Mm-hmm.
Probably, actually, I know I have it somewhere still. I'd never get rid of anything, sadly. So you could imagine how much stupid stuff I have, but I have things like that. And so that to me made sense, rack gear and programming. And so when I joined the Violet Burning, I know how I met Schon. This is actually, I know probably the first time I actually met Schon now, because this actually jogs memory. I only had this Digitech thing for effects. And so Michael, the singer, was like, "Oh, you got to get something better." So we went to Guitar Center, and I bought a Elisa's Quadriverb first. But then Michael really liked this big, huge, long, wet reverb from the Rocktron and Telefx.
Yep.
And so you sold me yours because you didn't need it anymore.
That's right.
So that's the thing is that first, and I remember for the time used, it was crazy expensive. It was still like you sold like $600 or $700.
Oh yeah, because they were like a big deal back then. That was like
the rock. Yeah. So I was using rack effects and trying to use like using like a Fender head, but trying to use distortion pedals into line it, like distort pedals, then into rack units, not in effects loop. So taking these line level effects and trying to run them in the front end of the amp. I know you remember this.
Oh yeah.
And just not being totally I was like, why am I not getting these sounds that I'm hearing on records? I just really didn't know. So finally, actually, at that time, I got an ADA MP1.
Yep.
And so then I had an MP1, the Quadriverb, and the IntelliFX. And then I would run that. Somewhere along the line, someone said, "Oh, you can run that into the effects return of a head." Right. And that essentially would run
power
like your power. Yeah. And I was like, "Oh, okay, now I kind of getting my sound together a little bit, So that made it presets, programming. I grew up in that kind of world. So, fast forward to Smashing Pumpkins, when I finally had, I have a guitar tech and we're going to build this rig, and had, like all the heads at the time, and this was like 2006, 2007, heads by this time had MIDI programming, and you'd use like a Rocktron all access MIDI controller and GCX loopers, so everything was in the rack, had heads, a few pedals, but those were in loops in the rack, and everything was programmed. And even then, a few things in the effects of like, I was using some TC rack units at that time. And that was like, it was okay. It was okay. I went through a few different brands of heads and trying to figure it out. But I still kind of wanted that. I loved having the ADA because I could really tailor the tones to every song and what guitar I was using at the time, because you could make preset for that song with that guitar, get the gain structure, because it was all MIDI presets. When you're using a head, you kind of have to set it and compromise for different tunings, different guitars. But things like that didn't really exist anymore.
Right.
And so then I stumbled upon the Randall modules, and so I had the preamp power amp version, which had 4 modules that you could kind of switch in and out.
Yeah.
And so I did that for a while, and I built this really, really complex rig one time that had that with it was the first version of the Axe Effects.
Okay.
And I was, it's funny because that rig actually is what my rig is now, in terms of I had, the Axe Effects to a certain degree was the main thing that was kind of routing the signal. And, I could choose either I could go all Axe Effects into the power amp or my Randall preamp, with the effects routed. I thought like, well, I can kind of get everything there. And if there's not a sound that I totally digging that I can get out of my actual preamp, I can use the Axe Effects and create something. But this was like 2008 or something. And honestly, it just didn't sound good. It just like it was compromised in too many ways. The technology, even though in theory you could do it, it just didn't really, it sounded artificial, and the buffering and stuff that you had to do to get it to work right. So it didn't buzz and have ground loops and all these kind of things. It just, even though in theory it worked, I didn't find the sound to be inspiring. So then I went back. I was like, well, fine. You know what? I'm just going to run a pedal board in front of the amp and just do, like someone to this day, like Billy, he doesn't like effects. So he just runs. He's always just run everything into the front of an amp.
Wow.
Pedals and effects and whatnot. So I did that, and I used, I had a massive pedal board, and then used like a Music Com Lab, switcher to, so I could still have presets. Always have, in a pro band, like you got to have presets because you can't be doing a tap dance and stuff like that. So I went to using pedals, using still multi-channel high gain amps, probably the Randall still, but using pedals to kind of color the sound. And then I finally went back, then I went, hey, sorry.
Oh, everybody wants to say hi to your dog, and I'm not kidding. We got so many comments about your dog already.
I know. Hey, it's okay. Anyways. Oh, he's just, hold on. Let me see. I'll pause. I'm going to pause for a second.
Kyle right now. Yeah, there's Robbie and like Kyle and all of them are going to be like,
dog.
What? Like, yeah.
Oh, that's cool. So Mario did the MIDI. Scroll back down.
Man, this gives me a great time to interject something that I wanted to say. So hopefully Jeff can still hear us right now. Yeah, I saw you say Mario did the MIDI for the Randall and the Ignitor modules.
Yeah.
The first time I saw that system was is way late, right? For me, it was at Music Messe in Frankfurt in, I want to say maybe 2018. And Antonin from Salvation Audio, he had them there. And I know Jeff's going to know who I'm talking about right now.
Yes.
And I had never seen them before. And I go by this guy's booth who has the most bitching looking pedals. He's got I don't even know what the hell this pedal did, but it had it had a wheel from a skateboard as its control, and I was like, this looks amazing. But he had all these modules, and they were all like obviously unlicensed modules of like, one said like the JJ on it, and I sat down and played it, and I was like, this is a Friedman, and he's like, it's not a Friedman. Wink. And I'm like, sounds exactly like a Friedman. And his modules were just unbelievable. So if you guys have those systems and get a chance to check them out, Antonin from Salvation Audio's stuff is killer.
Yeah, I actually used all his stuff, Billy and I both, you know, and at one point Billy flew him to Chicago and had him sit in the studio and basically take all his favorite heads and make them in that format. So we were both using that kind of system for a while. But, you know, it was kind of that weird period. You know, now there's Synergy.
Yes.
Kind of picked up that design, is making new stuff. But after, you know, at this time, there really wasn't anybody, you know, updating. You know, Randall hadn't made those things for years, and and they were starting to, you know, they weren't really well made, and you know, Antonin, certainly his products were great, but the units in and of themselves weren't really robust, and so I was like, okay, I got to get off of this. I got to kind of search for something new, and then we were off cycle. And like I said, I kept on using these, you know, Revv models and Helix, and so then that's when I actually had management reach out, and then that's when this kind of relationship started.
That's awesome.
Yeah, because I hadn't really, honestly, to be quite honest, I hadn't been inspired at all sonically by any of the like new amps on the market, like especially high gain stuff. Like when I, you know, first joined the band, I was lucky in that I was able to kind of try everything. And like my first rehearsal with the band, Billy and I both tried playing the same rigs. Like we were both going to like play Diesels and Bogners, and we realized, oh my gosh, it sounds terrible if we're both actually using the same amp. And so once we switched to using two different heads, the sound was much bigger, wider, you know. And so I played a bunch of different stuff at the time, but you know, I didn't really feel inspired by much of what was, you know, kind of out on the market. And it wasn't until I really started using these Revv models, I was like, wow, there's something about the sound of these that I'm just really like love, and it was attracted to.
You know, it's funny, like Flux just commented there about the fact that it's cool that you found us through Line 6 and that you think a lot of people found Revv that way. That's 100% true. And actually, I would say some of the biggest guitar players that we've either built stuff for that maybe aren't touring our stuff right now, but like guys that will reach out that I would never expect to get a call from. You know, like one day I got a message from Bill from Mastodon, and like he's got a signature Butterslacks and head with Friedman, and he's like, man, I've been playing this preset on the Helix, and it's amazing, and I want to get one of your heads. And I was like, what? And it's funny because when Line 6 approached us about it, I should back up. Line 6 didn't approach us. What happened was Line 6 ordered an amp through our web store, and I saw the email address said purchasing at line6.com, and I was like, oh, they're gonna model the amp for the Helix. So I reached out and said like, hey, you know, I'm just wondering, you know, are you planning to model this for the Helix? And they said, well, yeah. I said, okay, cool. I'm like, well, is there any way that we could license you or like sign, you know, a release form that you would use our actual branding in it? And they were like, we're sorry, what? And I'm like, yeah, I would much prefer for you to call it, you know, the Revv or the Generator than to call it like the General or some other name where people are like, oh, I think that's the Generator. And like right away, they were like, no one has ever asked us to do this. They're like, you realize we won't pay you for this. And I'm like, 100%, that's fine. I'm like, I know you're going to do it one way or another. I would rather people at least know that that was our voice and our amp. And and I had a couple people say that we were crazy to do it, and you know, like Yamaha's a massive company, so they should pay you. And I was like, no, that's not the point. And yeah, like there are a lot of people that I know that have had their first experience with Revv just from Line 6, you know, which has been killer.
No, like I said, I had never heard of the amps before. And so it was really my introduction to it. Yeah. And at the time they only had the purple channel.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then they've added the red since too. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, it's that's been a long process for them, which is good. And they've been kind enough to let us know, like, hey, we're thinking about releasing this. Do you want to see what it sounds like and see what we think? And I'm like, yeah, absolutely.
Well, I hope they sent you a Helix at least in return.
They did. They Shawn was doing.
I was gonna say, I had.
You know what the best part about it is, though?
Yeah.
They bought that 120 from us, and we didn't give it to them. We were like, "You can buy the amp if you're going to do it." So we did make at one point $3,200 off of Line 6 for whatever $2,800, whatever the amp was at the time. Did get that for the branding.
Yeah,
but yeah, so. Yeah. So actually, one of the other questions I was going to ask you about when you're talking about when you first got the Pumpkins gig, like trying out a bunch of different amps with Billy to try and figure that out. How did you end up getting the Pumpkins gig, or how did that, like, how did any of that happen?
I think kind of just timing, be in the right place at the right time. The funny thing is I had basically kind of given up on music, and after I was in this band, I started another band called the Lassie Foundation with people that Shawn knows too, with Eric Campizano and Wayne, and it was so fun because before it was like it was like so serious, and we were trying so hard, and quit our jobs, and that's all we did, and you're trying to become successful. And then I joined this other band, and it was kind of things had changed, and it was fun to be in. It was very kind of musically liberating because it was just like sloppy and all over the place and sonically adventurous, and went back to using just all pedals and just trying to create crazy sounds, running as many pedals together as possible. But that didn't really go anywhere, and so I kind of was like, okay, I gotta figure life out. And I had gone to graduate school at UCLA. I was getting my doctorate in literature at UCLA, and I wasn't even really playing guitar much, to be honest. I had maybe just only 2 guitars at the time. I had them at my apartment. I'd kind of pick it up and play whatever, and whatever. But I didn't take it seriously and stuff. But then one day, actually what happened is I remember a friend of mine messaged me, and he said, "Hey, I know someone that works at Pumpkins Management, and they're putting the band back together. James isn't coming back, and so they're going to need a guitar player. I really think you should audition." I mean, I wasn't a professional guitar player where I auditioned. I had a bio and an 8x10 that I could send people at the time or anything. And so he goes, "Here's their management's information." So I emailed this guy, and he said, "Hey, can you send us whatever, a couple photos and write a bio?" And so I just went home that night, and I was like, okay, I'll write a bio about myself. You know what I mean? But, I was a big Pumpkins fan, so I had a really good idea of like what Billy would like. And so when I put like my guitar influences, I just put things that I knew that he would be like, "Oh my God, I can't believe there's someone out there that likes the same exact kind of stuff." And so, I got a call like immediately, like the next day, from someone in like actual Pumpkins organization. And then literally within days, I was having, breakfast with Billy and Jimmy at some place in the Valley. And we just kind of started talking, and it was a really long process. It wasn't like they said, "Hey, come down on this date, know these 4 songs, and then we'll let you know." It was like, "Hey, why don't you learn these couple songs?" I'd go and jam with Jimmy, and because, they needed to find a bass player too. So it would be like some bass player and me, and we'd play a couple songs. And but I know they really liked me. But the crazy thing is I was the first person that tried out. So they thought, well, it can't be this easy. So they're like, we got to try out some other people too. And so they, but they did, but obviously nothing worked out. But what was so cool is, so I would go and jam, and then they were at the Village Recorder finishing up a record. And I lived right by there because it's actually on the west side of LA, close to UCLA. And they would just be like, come hang out, watch us record, just get to know us, and it was so good because it was the Zeitgeist album, and they were finishing up, and Roy Thomas Baker was in there kind of co-producing and engineering it with them. So I mean, just imagine, you're like in classes one day, then all of a sudden you're in this recording studio with Roy Thomas Baker and watching this record get made. And it was, it was just really cool. And but finally after, it was like 3 or 4 months, they're like, okay, you got the gig, basically. It was a little different, a little more dramatic than that. Because at one point, I really didn't think I was going to get in. I actually was really bummed, because I'd put so much work in like just learning these tunes inside and out and trying to get, pushing, my playing as far as I could just to sound good. And, because I'd actually never really played in a band that was that heavy, and with the drummer that was that intense, like Jimmy, so it was like, oh my gosh, can I keep up with this? So I'd put a lot into doing it. And so there was a point where I'm like, okay, I don't think because what happened is when I had time to like learn the tunes, I just practiced all week, totally disregarded all my studies. I was just playing guitar like 8 hours a day, learning these tunes. And then one day Billy's like, okay, I'm going to come down and jam with you guys. So I'm like, oh my God, okay. And so it's me and Jimmy and Ginger, who ended up being the bass player, and Billy. Okay, like this is going to be the band. And so basically Billy walks in, he goes, oh, I don't want to play. I got some new riffs. And so him and Jimmy start playing this song. It's on Zeitgeist. It's called United States. It's like a crazy, it's like ZZ Top on steroids. It's like actually a shuffle like that, you know what I mean? But it's like a weird triplet feel, like down tuned to C sharp and like this heavy thing and all these kind of crazy odd time changes. And I just was like totally thrown off the bike, and so I went home that day, and I remember I walked into my little tiny studio apartment and just put my face, just fell face first into the bed. It just go like, okay, I totally just, it's over. Cause there's no way to come back from that. And it was it was actually right around this time, like probably this week, and so they broke for the holidays. They went back to Chicago, and I was like, I'm never going to hear from them again. But then they came back at the beginning of the year to finish the record. And one day I'm on campus and I get a call and I see it's Jimmy. And he goes, yeah, I just want to talk about that last jam session. And I was just like, oh gosh, he goes, well, Billy, I thought it, actually went really well. I'm like, you crazy. He goes, but we do think you need to work on a few things, but we want to kind of continue going down this road. And then like 3 days later, they said, okay, you're in the band. Nice. You got the gig. You got the gig. And then, literally like a week later, Dave Friedman's coming in the studio to like, okay, we're going to talk to a rig designer, to build it. I'm like, I don't even know what's going on.
Yeah.
I realized, and I didn't know who he was at the time. And now I realize, oh my God, that was Dave Friedman. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's so cool. Yeah. The vision that went through my head is when they were throwing that song at you, like in drop, like C sharp. It's like by the end of the song, you're still like, should I detune?
I know. I was like, oh my God. Like it was just crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I love it, man. That's so cool.
But it's so sweet, because I didn't even have like an amp like that. And so Michael Pritzel actually he had a mod. You remember this guy? There used to be a guy who was kind of big, Roccaforte. I don't know if you remember. Yeah, he had a Roccaforte modded Marshall. So it sounded really, really high gain and really good. So, thank God Michael let me use it. So at least I had an amp that could kind of keep up with this stuff.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, that's cool, man. That's so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah,
That's,
because I just remember hearing I was like, well, what is Jeff doing in Chicago? Like, what's going on out there? And I was like, oh, he got the Smashing Pumpkins gig, and I was like, oh, well, that would explain it. Because to me, it just seemed like it happened so fast. Like one week you weren't, and then the next week you were, but it was obviously a pretty like drawn out thing, man.
Yeah, and you know, it's so crazy. And I was talking to Billy about this even recently, and I realized I had no idea what I was getting myself into.
Yeah.
No idea. But I don't regret it, you know, for 1 second. It like the things that I've been able to do and experience, you know, have been just incredible.
Yeah, it's awesome, man.
Well, when we got to go to the show last month, I could not believe how huge you guys sounded in that venue. I mean, it's in an arena, which I've done lots of arena shows as a rigger, and I almost always expect that the sound is going to be, honestly, unless it's like a big country act. Big country acts have their shit together when they get into arenas, and it always sounds awesome. But most of the time in arenas, even huge bands, you're like, it sounds a little bit thin, or you know what I mean? Like it's just something's a little bit off. And when you guys started sound checking, I was like, holy shit. Like this sounds unbelievable. Like, yeah. And like for the three of you to be playing, I mean, very, very different rigs, but like nothing felt like it was butting heads with each other. Like everything felt or sounded like it just layered like perfectly. It was awesome.
No, that's really, you can sit and play an amp in your studio, in your, you know, in your house, whatever. And obviously when you start recording with something, you start really hearing how the relationality of the amp to not only other instruments, bass, drums, vocals, but to other guitar too. And, you know, playing in that band live with, you know, Billy's basically using that Grace is his main kind of high gain sound. James has the Friedman, Jerry Cantrell head. And then, you know, so you really, that's a lot of gain, you know, going on. And so it can get very messy and washy really quick. And so it's really about, you really learn about like the clarity and articulation of an amp when you know, and we're on in-ear, so I could really hear what's going on. And I pan everybody in such a way that I can hear everybody, you know, like it's more like a studio mix. Cause I don't want to hear myself in the middle. I have Billy on the left, I'm on the right, because we're playing a lot of rhythm together. So I want to match up as much as possible. I got James kind of at the middle, and you really, really hear what an amp sounds like in that context, if you can hear it. Because if you have a bad tone, you just get washed out. You know, I mean, it just sounds like you can't hear yourself, you know. And usually what I found, the better an amp sounds, you don't even have to be that loud, you know, because it has a space to sit in. You're not fighting other frequencies. You can hear the articulation. And you know, and as I mentioned in the video, you know, these heads are you know, the Gen 120s is just so great because you can really fine tune each channel to, you know, to what your needs are. And like I said, I was telling Trace, you know, my tech, that I said, you know, I've usually by the end of a tour, I hate my guitar sound. And over the course of this tour, as we got things more and more dialed in and using like the Captor Rex and finding the right, you know, amp and mic, you know, cabinet and mic combination and levels, and, you know, tilting it. You can really fine tune all this stuff now. I really started to really love, I'm like, wow, I've never been happier with my sound. And I find it so inspiring and makes me want to play more. And I really like those heads have become part of my, like, kind of go to when I think of distorted rock guitars now. I think less of like the Marshall. I think like, oh, I really like that channel 3 of the Revv, because I find that I play more like me.
Yeah.
And that's really tough to do, you know, finding gear. I think in the old days, Marshall heads and Shawn, like stuff was so all over the place.
Yeah.
No amps were highly inconsistent, and then maybe with things like boogies and stuff, they were a little more like every head sounded close or similar, you know what I mean? But before that, and so you really could develop your own sound if you because you really had to hunt to find the right amp and get it dialed in just right, and pedals and the rack or whatever you're using. What I found with stuff is gear is much more consistent now, to where but it's a little bit more difficult to find maybe your own unique twist on it, because you're just turning it on and it sounds great. You're like, okay, I don't need to do anything. I mean, it just sounds awesome. But like I said, I found these heads, really finding the way to where I'm building like a relationship with those sounds. And it's not me just playing into the amp. It's the amp kind of coming back into me and kind of changing the way I play. And I feel like that's a healthy kind of gear relationship when it starts, changing the way that you kind of hear. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that makes a ton of sense because I always tell, especially the young cats, the young kittens out there. It's like, man, it's like, I don't mean to say it in a disparaging way, but it's almost like a lifelong struggle to be happy with your tones. Because you're not only discovering new equipment, but you're also discovering like who you are as a player. You're discovering, oh, well, this is actually who I am as a player. So now I'm going to go after that. And, it's a really interesting thing. And then when you step into something that's perfect, that's what happens. It's like, oh, now I can just play. Now I'm just playing and I've got my signature thing. And, but it can take a minute. Yeah.
And, now there's just too many options.
There's a lot of options.
You know what I mean? It's overwhelming and so much good stuff, so much good stuff that the options can be overwhelming, and that you kind of have to, you have to kind of choose at least a little bit and kind of pick your battles and go, okay, I'm gonna, I'm gonna live with this for a bit.
Settle into it.
Yeah.
Because back when all those Marshalls were around, because especially at the shop, guys were bringing in all kinds of great plexis and awesome old Voxes, and the thing for me was I'd find, I'd hear one and be like, okay, I got to get that, and they'd want either way too much money for it, or they didn't want to sell it. And then, I'd find one and it would sound terrible because they were really, really inconsistent.
Yeah.
So that, back then that was a different ballgame. And now it's super prolific. There's so many options,
Yeah.
It's completely different ballgame now.
It's funny because I'm reading this book, Steve Rosen, Tone Chaser. It's kind of this really cool book about Eddie Van Halen.
I got to read that.
Yeah, it's really cool. It's really cool. And, and just thinking that, for him, he really talks about like the development of his rig. And when, I'm in the section where he doesn't even know what it is. He's like, I don't know how they do it, but it's basically, he has a load box. And then, his head is now just at line and then sending it to those H&H power amps to cabinets. And he's like, I can use just one head, but have my sound all over the stage. You know what I mean? He's like, but it's my whole sound. It's not like a line level. It's like taking the power section too. And he's like, I don't even know what it is. I thought, so I don't know who built it for him at that time. You know what I mean? But you just see that, but because he had that relationship with that head, that one head, and and it's, like I said, it's a little bit harder to get that because, like I said, we're dealing with stuff that's much more consistent now, so yeah.
Yeah. And feels like crazy important, at least to me.
Yeah.
Like it has to feel a certain way. And some people like, a faster attack with their amps. Other people like a little bit of sag or whatever it is. But, guitar players were so sympathetic to that. And so for me, that's always a big, like, that's where kind of almost a start point. I mean, it has to sound good, but really the start point for me is if it doesn't feel right, then I already know, even if it sounds great, if it's not feeling good, then I know it's probably not going to be a fit. It's important.
It's funny, Trace, really that talks about, as my we talk about that a lot about, yeah, you can get an amp to sound good, but it doesn't feel good.
Yep, absolutely.
And a lot of those old Marshalls, a lot of the work that he's done is I can get you that sound, but it'll actually feel good under the fingers and, be easier for you to play. And
Yep.
you'll be more inspired because you're not fighting, even though if you like the sound, but you're not fighting the feel.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
It can't be a struggle because, I mean, if you're getting great tone, but it's still a struggle, it's like, okay, well, you look at how it feels,
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that was my thing when I got to try that Overdrive special, right? That Blackbird Studios in Nashville has a Dumble ODS. And the first time I got to play it, I was expecting it to have a ton of sag. You know what I like as a player. That's why I like 50-watt Marshalls. I want it to be like, I want it to saturate well, and I want there to be a lot of sag because I don't want it to be stiff and fast. Because I'm not a good enough player to play amps like that.
Well, it's not even about being good enough. It's just that's the feel. That's what you're used to. And
I'm going to just go with I'm not a good enough player in order to play amps like that. So I found it super stiff and like really uninspiring. And that's really what ends up happening to me if I play something that, sure, like if I hit, just like you can have an awesome tone, right? But if I can't do anything more than that because I feel like I'm tripping over my hands trying to get a riff out, I'm not going to want to play it. And that was probably for me when I met Dan and got to play the prototype of the 120. Probably wasn't even the prototype. I think it's when I got mine. It was the first time in over a decade that I found myself just sitting down and playing and writing riffs for like an hour straight. And then like all of a sudden setting my guitar down and realizing like, oh man, I've been here for an hour. And I hadn't done that where I wasn't playing for some sort of utility reason, either because I had to teach or because I had a gig or whatever it was. It was the first time that like, oh, like I'm just playing because I love how this feels. I love how it sounds. I love everything about it. And it feels like home to my hands is what it feels like.
Yeah, you weren't checking it out anymore. You were actually just playing. Yeah.
Yeah, and it didn't matter like if it was green channel, purple channel, red channel. Like the whole amp felt that way to me. The purple or the blue channel, not as much on the original hand-wired one, which he fixed, which is awesome. But actually, I want to bounce back just a second. Dan actually had a question for you about that. So, can you see comments, Jeff?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So I should have probably asked you that before we were an hour and 5 minutes into the stream. But we're real organized here. So,
I think what Dan is, if I'm, maybe he can comment even again if I'm trying to. He says, if the tone became more raw and less polished, I'm thinking that maybe that would be a little bit maybe more like say like a commercial or something, something like that, a little more less refined, a little more. I think it's interesting because sometimes I do miss that, that like this is like a very almost kind of very regal, like you play it and you're like, wow, I don't want to put it like in economic terms, but you're like, well, that's a nice sound. You know what I mean? Like that's I like it, and it's a question of why. I have to kind of a roundabout way to answer his question. There is part of me, yes, I would say I would be possibly, might be if there was some way to kind of add some of that into the equation that, like with the button or something that kind of like a shift that could kind of, but what I love about high gain amps and this is, and people always ask this question because pumpkins, they assume that, especially because of Siamese or whatever, that we're using fuzz pedals live, which we never do. We never use, like we're always have used, since I've been in the band and even Melancholy, and I know in Siamese Dream, Billy was using like 88 preamp or the JMP1 preamp. It was always kind of to replicate fuzz sounds. We would always use high gain amps. Yeah, and there is something with a really good high gain amp. You kind of get this kind of beautiful complexity of distortion where there's almost like this kind of fuzzy thing around the note, even on high gain, that is can be very beautiful and pretty. And if you kind of can exploit it right, you kind of can get some of that. But unlike fuzz, a good amp is a high gain amp is very clear and articulate. Which is why in an arena it would just sound like a mess in there. You kind of need to have like kind of clearly defined frequencies at some point to kind of so the sound man is our person has something to work with. Like to me, there is something about the raw power of like a plexi, and the way that it pushes the air, that there's not a high gain amp that I've heard that sounds like that. So it's not a criticism of Revv or Friedman or anybody. It's like, it's just that it's kind of a different animal. And so I've never played anything that actually can kind of reinsert that kind of raw power of like of a plexi. I do know from playing with players, like we've jammed a few times with like Uli John Roth, who was in the Scorpions, and he only uses those kind of old plexi sound. And I got to tell you, we're playing, these high gain amps, and his sound always is, even if it's volume wise, it's the parent volume is way louder and kind of cuts through more. So I could see, like I said, so I definitely, and I like players that kind of use that sound, and when you talk to someone like Uli, he considers himself a direct descendant of like Hendrix in terms of that kind of plexi sound. So like I said, like to answer, Dan's question, like if somehow you could kind of find a marriage of those things, I think that would be really, really cool.
Nice.
It really would actually be really unique.
So I think the reason that Dan is asking about that, I'll send you a clip of it, but on the live stream last week, it was Dan and I, we were talking about kind of like the history of Revv and like, what he started with. And what was interesting is up until that afternoon, I had never played the first amp that he built. I thought the first amp he built was the Generator 120, but he actually had built this little 7-watt amp. And it, I played it in the afternoon, and it does what you're talking about. That's why he's asking that. Shawn was just here playing it, and I saw the reason I'm even commenting about it too is I saw somebody else asked if they're still watching whether or not you got a chance to play it, and a bunch of different ways.
Pretty much does that.
Yeah. So it does kind of that thing a little bit, like definitely more than any other product that we have. And
but that's the thing though. I think the reason, those old plexis, 100-watt plexi sound so amazing is there's not a lot of circuit there. The second you start adding more gain in those stages, then it's harder and harder to keep it sounding open, and the big raw push it becomes more difficult. So then you have to dig into the circuits and figure out where you can open things up but still retain the amount of saturation. And I'm with you. I think it would be killer to blend the two, and I think Dan's onto something.
Well, something I didn't say, which is true, is you're talking really two different types of distortion, where you're talking, power amp distortion versus most modern everything is mostly done in the preamp section, and so that's just two different worlds. And like I said, all things considered, when you're dealing with a 4-channel head and you got to balance all these things, like, well, you have to do those things because but if somehow like I said, where I'm not a designer, so I don't know how to if you could somehow kind of find that kind of marriage of those two mentalities somewhere, it could be something really cool.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Scott had asked, has Revstar been your go-to guitar for a while, and what other guitars have inspired your playing?
Well, normally I started my first real guitar was a Strat, Fender Strat. And so that kind of guitar, that scale length, that type of bolt-on neck, about is really most what I, really feel comfortable playing. When I joined the Pumpkins, I had to play, Gibsons at first. I started playing Les Pauls and SGs, and I never even owned one. So it was like, whoa, I had to just totally different kind of thing. So with my relationship with Yamaha over the years, actually I got one. That fluorescent guitar is actually this custom made Pacifica, and I have 4 of those, and it's basically a super Strat. Those are kind of, when I think of myself as a player, that's kind of my go-to type of guitar that I want to play, something similar to what Shawn is playing,
That's my go-to guitar.
Yeah, something like that, something a little bit more in that world. But this new iteration of the Revv Star, this is kind of a redesign, like the second version of the guitar. And the first ones were, although they sounded good, they weren't, I didn't love playing them. Like the ergonomics of the guitar needed some refinement. And so when they came out with this new one, they sent me a couple, and I was just like, wow, these guitars sound and play great, and they feel great, like across, because that's a big thing is, because I get to do a lot of this kind of R&D work with them, and they'll design a guitar, and Yamaha's not one person. It's like, they have teams of people in Japan that are working on these things. And so it's a totally different type of process. It's very, very fascinating learning, but sometimes, what is missed is like, and a lot of players can't necessarily articulate it well, is like, if you've grown up playing a Strat or a Gibson or a Tele, and you put on something and it doesn't feel across your body similar, or if it's so far off that even if it sounds great, you're going to just gravitate towards back what you're used to playing. So I think with this new Revv Star, they really got the ergonomics of it right, to where it actually feels just so great to play. Like the neck profile is good, the thickness of the body, and kind of slight pickup redesign. And for this batch of songs that we're playing this on this last tour, it really worked really, really well for me. And so I ended up using those a lot, but I use the Pacificas too. I use like kind of the super Strats as well. But, because my sound in the band, Billy, James is mostly a Les Paul player. And so, and then Billy has his signature Reverend guitar. And so I kind of I don't need to be as thick as James on the low end. So I'm looking for a little more of like, I want to sit in the mid range a little bit more, have a little more cut. And so the Revv Stars actually sound really well, more like a SG, more than a Les Paul, where it doesn't have as much kind of bulky low end, but I don't really need it. We have 3 guitar players and a bass player. It's like, I don't need all that, like that super thick low end. So I really like playing them.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Robbie's asking, so I see you've got some guitars behind you. Any chance you have one of those Pacificas there?
Yeah, I can grab it real quick. Yeah, Shawn again. Color's not coming across that well. I guess you can kind of see.
Yeah.
I have 4 of these actually, and they're all different colors. And but these were custom made by Yamaha, and they have a custom shop in Calabasas up here. And this is the only one. I have locking Floyd's 24 frets. These has a great kind of contour on the back.
Nice.
These have like from Adam, from my good friend Adam, has a company called FU Tone, and so it's got like a brass block here, and the noiseless springs, all these like titanium inserts here, and but this one actually has with the Sustainiac too.
Oh, right on.
Nice.
But the other 3 don't have the Sustainiac.
Nice.
Yeah, but Seymour Duncan pickups. This is the Hunter, which is George Lynch's pickup. So it's
yeah.
a really high output ceramic pickup, and that's actually another reason why I didn't use these as much, because I really like the way these pickups sound, but I think there was more. This pickup was designed because he used it on the under lock and key, was to really kind of go into that modded Marshall type of head and to get that whatever bit of extra gain, because these are like super high up, like 15 or something like that.
Yeah.
And once I started using this with the Revv heads, actually it's a little dark and murky, that pickup.
Okay.
So I need to change the pickups because the heads have so much gain. I actually don't need it coming from the guitar. It's like actually too much coming out of the guitar. And so the Revv Stars I'm basically using like hot, not even hot, like PAF style. So they're really clear, really open, really articulate, but because I have more than enough gain on tap with the head. And so I love it because then I can actually get a little bit of that clarity back on the guitar side of things. So I'm not having to use the guitar to kind of try to push more gain.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's hard for us to see because you're like this big.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On the prompter here, but like it
Yeah.
reminds me of like a cross between like an orange and a Road Flare Red from.
It is. Yeah. It is. It's I'm friends with Scotty Hill from Skid Row, and he says that this color is called emergency orange.
Nice.
in heavy metal language, you know what I mean?
Right.
So that's what he called it. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Dude, I love it.
Yeah.
Any of you guys have any other questions for Jeff either, or for Shawn? Yeah, Scott asked one. So there were a couple a little bit further back up, but I don't know. There's a lot of comments that just came through. Poo Ninja wants to know 1 or 2 bats for the Sustainiac. Is that like you can get a humbucker Sustainiac or a?
Well, okay.
Yeah.
So when I first got it, it actually had the humbucker size in here, but that other side is just empty plastic. It's just so it can fit in a humbucker size hole. And
Gotcha.
So since this has 24 frets and there wasn't a lot of space here, and I really like to pick actually here. And so once I realized, okay, I said, we can get the single coil size one because that other side doesn't actually do anything. So so this one and the humbucker are the same thing.
Right on. Yeah.
Do you have any like you said you're a Strat guy? Do you have any like older Strats or anything from when you started playing that are kind of your like sentimental guitars or anything like that?
I do. I still have my first. I still have my first Fender Strat, which was like an 88, 89 Strat Plus. If you remember those with the lace sensor pickups.
Oh, sure.
That was a thing. I knew at the time, even though I really wanted like something like an Ibanez or something, but I don't know what, I was like, well, I should get like a Strat, but then the guy at the music was like, well, these are like the newest ones. These are, these pickups are quiet and, so it was cool, but I got and I remember that guitar was like brand new. I think it was like, I remember because I had to save up, it was like $600 for a brand new Fender Strat Plus, whatever, 88 or 89. Yeah. I still have that. I have a few like American vintage reissue stuff, that's kind of, decent. I actually just recently picked up a Nash, kind of Strat, because I was like, I really want something just really classic, nice, for recording. So some things like that. Yeah.
Nice.
Awesome.
I actually really got this. It's back there too. Maybe I'll grab it. I got this. I'll just grab it real quick.
Yeah. What was that? Semi-torn down there.
Oh yeah. You were just talking to me about that.
Oh yeah, that's a guy from New York. His name's Michael Mendito. Do you know Jeff?
I don't know. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, because he reached out to me to just check out this single-ended 5-watt point-to-point wired amp. He just wires them out of his house, and it's a really, really nice like I said, single-ended EL84 5-watt amp. It's really voiced nicely. But yeah, he had sent it out to just have me, check it out and give it a whirl. It's a really nice head. I actually haven't talked to him in a minute. I need to reach out to him and see what he's been up to. But yeah, that's what that was.
So I just got this 1980 Yamaha SG 1000.
Oh, nice.
Those are killer.
Yep.
Yeah. Because I really got into John McGeoch from the Susie and the Banshees guitar player. I always get these really cool kind of cleanish, semi-distorted sounds, and I always say he had this exact guitar. So I was like, okay, I got to get that sound. I got to, and because it's got this pretty interesting. I don't know what kind of these pickups are, and they kind of split in a very interesting way. They're kind of coil spin, but I think they must be wired. I don't know.
Some sort of weird, weird tap or something. Yeah.
But the nice people at Yamaha actually, I got it, had like no frets left, and so I sent it to them, and they completely refretted it, put actually stainless steel frets on it for me, so I never feel it feels incredible. It plays the action. I mean, I really like low action. And this action is, I was like, actually so I'm like, I think I'm actually have to raise it. I can't even feel the strings.
Right, it's a little too easy.
And it doesn't buzz or anything. It's like, wow, like how could it be so low?
Nice.
Yeah. And it's funny because I remember being at the boogie store with you and talking about that. And, because I think you were basically telling me that he's like, I saw you and you play with the Violets, whatever. And he's like, you guys are out of tune all the time because you guys are hitting too hard. He's like, you play out of tune, and so. Well,
that was more pointed at Mike than.
I was probably bad too, what I mean? And it is funny. I was having lunch or coffee yesterday with a friend of mine who is a former guitar tech, and I was like, I don't think I think I have a pretty, I have a pretty controlled touch these days. And he goes, no, you have a really light touch compared to most guys now. And I'm like, really? You know what I mean? But
yeah.
And I remember because you told me, you said, after a while, it doesn't get more distorted or louder. If you're using a distorted amp, it doesn't get any louder.
There's going to be a stop point. Yeah.
But
that was just all those years of playing with Michael, though, because Michael was super heavy-handed.
Yeah.
All the time. But it was just, he's an emotional player, so that was the thing. But
yeah, no.
I was such a jerk back then.
No, and Billy's kind of similar too. I mean, he hits a lot harder than me. What I mean? And so I noticed the things like, like trying to, I'm kind of sometimes trying to bend in tune a little bit, I mean, to kind of mimic, to the tuning, to try to get in some kind of tuning synchronicity. But yeah, I really play pretty light these days, I guess, I don't know.
I think, I guess I was more into kind of attempting to shred in my early days, crazy kid with a dream. And I think I had a lighter feel, but now the style that I play, I would say I definitely am a bit more like heavy-handed.
Yeah.
I can still be super finesse.
Yeah.
But I definitely play harder. And that's what, like with you mentioning low action, that's kind of a big deal for me because I like low action. But if it's choky at all, like if it's not dynamic, if somehow I do dig in and it seems to just kind of choke, that's when I'll raise the action.
Yeah.
But also if you're a really light touch player, then you can have action super low. I mean, Billy Gibbons is a perfect example. I mean, he plays super light strings, super light touch, massive tone.
But it doesn't sound like that. And think about, Eddie Van Halen too, right? 9-gauge strings, tuned down a half step, sometimes even drop D. Light, I think from what I understand, fairly light picks, but it sounds so mean and aggressive.
Oh my God, yeah, it's massive,
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, Eddie was just a rascal of a player.
Yeah. So that's what I mean. Yeah, it's just it's like kind of learning those things, I mean, and and I even now use like pretty heavy. I use actually the heaviest picks I've ever used in 1.14. You know, for me, that's like the heaviest I've ever used. You know what I mean? So yeah. But
I mean, I've been using just plain old like Fender heavies for I don't know how long now. So
easy, right?
yeah. It's just like, man, I don't like to think about things.
yeah. No, I know. Keep it easy. I know.
Yeah.
But like I said, with these, you know, with high gain amps and stuff like that we're using, it's like there's so much, you know, there's lots of colors in there if you kind of have some dynamics in your picking hand.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know what I mean? That's the thing. Is so it's just you can really get a lot of kind of color in there, and what's funny is, you know, learning too just how much like the biggest EQ pedal you could probably use is actually the pick. You know,
absolutely.
How different picks just sound so incredibly different. I mean, that's just kind of, you know, that was a big revelation.
Yeah, well, and just pick angle too. If I need to sound darker, I'll just angle into the string as opposed to being parallel with it, and voila, you know, I didn't touch anything. So or you can play the shoulder of the pick as opposed to the sharp end. And there's all kinds of things you can do, and it's the truth.
Yeah. So Sam asked, "Hey, Shawn and Jeff, what outputs from your aux do you guys use when recording?"
Oh yeah, always the line outs. I don't use the fiber out or anything like that. I like it. Yeah, that's how I run mine. I'm assuming you probably do the same thing, Jeff, because you're running it into the
the
Neve, right?
the Neve. Yeah, I've never tried the optical. Never even tried it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure it's fine, but there was just for me, it was just something simple. I'll just run the line outs and I'm good to go, and it works great. Sounds great.
Yeah. So is the optical, would that go straight into like your interface somehow?
Yeah.
So it's just taking digital information and then
you're just staying digital across the board, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Which might sound great, but for me, I was like, because and I also knew at some point I would want to run it through different like preamps, you know, analog preamps. So always line out.
Yeah.
James also asks question for you: pickguard or no pickguard on a Les Paul? This is a debate on the live stream, and my nephew and I, who are on the stream a lot of the time, we have a debate about this.
Be very careful with your answers, Schroeder.
Yeah.
I'm just going to be honest because I'm definitely a pickguard person because this one came, it didn't have a pickguard, and when I bought it, and I actually bought it from Music Zoo, and I said you have to find a pickguard for it before you sell it to me.
Oh, I'm winning.
I'm with you there.
No pickguard. Yeah, Hoogie. It's a 1980s.
It's an 80s thing, buddy.
Yeah,
but like Slash, right? He's like no pickguard.
Right,
exactly.
Right,
yeah.
I mean, Derek let me borrow a guitar. It was a gold top guitar. I didn't have a pickguard. I literally bought a pickguard for it and put it on.
And it looks so much better.
It looks so much better. Yeah.
It's actually in the entrance right now.
Yeah. No, you're wrong.
Oh no,
sorry,
it looks
bud.
so much better.
Not you, Jeff. Luke is wrong.
Yeah, that's gonna be that's a forever debate. Les Pauls have to have.
I want to see in the comment section pickguard or no pickguard on Les Pauls. We've done it a ton of times.
Yeah.
We got some other questions here. I saw that Mario was asking what shop you used to be at.
Well, the very, very first shop I worked at was Lab Sound Garden Grove.
Nice.
And then I jumped quickly from there to Van Nuys Lab Sound, and then that's when my brother Scott started working, and then Scott and I opened a shop called Think Music at the time, and then that shop ended up being Mesa Boogie South Coast, which was the one that was by Guitar Center. The one you came into, Jeff, on Bristol was actually called Think Music, but we were just selling Mesa and Anderson stuff.
Yes.
But then we ended up kind of co-opting with Mesa, and that's when Mesa Boogie South Coast happened, and then Sunset Boulevard. But that, that's kind of in, the quick answer.
Wait,
as far as I can tell.
Was the Costa Mesa before the Sunset location?
Well, no, there was Van Nuys, and there was Garden Grove, and then the Van Nuys one ended up on Sunset, and then the Fountain Valley one, which was on by Guitar Center.
Yeah, right off the freeway there. I remember.
Yeah,
I may have gone there. I may have actually gone there.
Yeah, because I think it was that one you were coming into. Yeah, and that would have been the Mesa Boogie South Coast, and then Mesa Boogie Hollywood was the one on Sunset. Yeah, yeah. But yeah, it was Van Nuys, man. I walked into the Garden Grove shop, and because I was like, there's Mesa Boogies here? Oh my God. And that's the only reason I walked in, and then I hit it off with those guys, and they, offered to hire me, and then kind of went from there.
Yeah. I actually went into the Mesa Boogie store fairly recently on Sunset because I actually had to buy, for all things, I had to buy a power amp.
Oh, nice.
Still using those Randall modules.
Sure.
I was like, I need a new power amp. And, there's not a lot of options in, these days. And so, actually Drew Foppy, my guitar tech at the time, was like, oh, I'll hook you up with whatever Mesa Boogie. And so I went in there and, I can imagine, 2019 trying out power amps.
Yeah. I know. It's crazy, right?
Yeah.
Drew was commenting earlier.
Tonight. Oh yeah, Drew's
he popped in here.
Yeah.
And Hoogie's not here right now.
Yeah, I know. And Hoogie just took off as soon as we started talking about Drew. It's perfect. Ilmaris asks, Jeff, if P90s wouldn't buzz, would you use them in your Revstar, or would you still go with mini humbuckers?
I would go with minis just because the reason I'm into them is I actually bought a 72 Les Paul Deluxe gold top and with embossed.
Now we're talking.
Does it have a pickguard on it?
Shut up.
It does. And I had the original, but the original got actually so bent, I actually had to buy even a new one for it. So it was because it was like too curved. You know what I mean? It was kind of throwing me off. And I just fell in love because the reason I bought that guitar is because we went through like a big Thin Lizzy phase one day, and I was like, oh my God, those tones, those Les Paul Deluxe tones. And so I bought that guitar, and so I kind of like the mini thing. I feel like they're a hard pickup to find new ones that are done right. And this guy I've been working with, Chris, he owns a little guitar shop in Boston called Black Cat Guitars. And he honestly, he just makes like the best mini humbuckers. And he actually claims that his are based more off of 60s Epiphone minis.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And, but it kind of, wound to his own taste. But what's great about it is you get, it's like a bigger, slightly fatter, like single coil-ish kind of tone, hum canceling, but really great clean sounds too. Like really great clean sounds. And again, like I think part of the revelation for me though too is in using the Revv heads, it's like I don't have to fight like the gain being the amount of gain being an issue, and saturation and and sustain and so I really dig using those pickups. So actually, I'm kind of, not that I don't think I'm giving any information away. It's not for sure going to happen, but I am kind of talking a little bit with Yamaha about actually seeing if we can maybe make that my kind of Revstar with the minis, kind of a bit of a production guitar in some capacity. Cool. I don't know how, because it's something that they don't really make.
Yeah.
A guitar with minis.
Yeah.
So,
one of my favorite Les Pauls that I've ever played, like Sean's got an R9 that's killer. And then there's a 70, we think it's either 60, it's somewhere between 69 and 72. The guy doesn't know what it is, but it's a local producer and studio owner here named John Paul Peters, who has a 70s gold top deluxe. Was it here when you
came
here? And it's just heartbreakingly good. It sounds unbelievable. It feels killer.
Well, I gotta go grab mine now. I'll show it to you. It's pretty cool.
Nice.
Oh,
yes, it's right here.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
In the meantime, I saw somebody ask what advice you would have for a beginner who was looking to pick up the guitar and learn how to play. So why don't you tell everybody about that?
Well, that is my advice is pick it up. There's massive resources out there now.
Yeah.
So the first thing to do is just have a guitar in your lap. And I can remember as a kid, that's basically what I was doing, is I just had it in my lap, and even though I didn't know chords, I just was getting the feel for the instrument and just goofing around. And it's a, you know, I don't like to say, well, you know, get with a teacher and learn theory or whatever. But what I would say is, yeah, get with somebody that knows just basic chord shapes that can kind of get you going. And then just see how it goes from there. It's like, you'll know if you want to like really, really study or if you just want to play. But at least for me growing up, I have it in my lap. I mean, I won't say that it wasn't a struggle at times, but yeah, you're going to play it because you love it. And sometimes it'll be a struggle, but for the most part, it should be, you know, really enjoyable. But I'm not going to be the guy that says, well, get this guitar and then go see this type of teacher and then study these things. You know, just pick what, you know, even aesthetically, if you think electric guitars are cool, start with that. If you think acoustic guitars are cool, do that. But I will say that's going to be more of a break-in on your hands, truthfully. Yeah. I used to be the guy that would always say, no, start on acoustic. But like, no, if you want to start on electric, it's actually easier. You'll make music faster because it's just easier.
It's more fun.
Yeah, yeah.
If you want to play rock and roll.
If you want to play that rock and roll.
Yeah. Devil's music. You know how it goes.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Here I got.
Oh yeah, it's a gold top too.
Yeah, you can see it a little bit.
With the pickguard.
With the pickguard, and you know,
I'll forgive it on that.
Definitely a player's.
Because how old it is.
Player's guitar, but you know, this actually has 72 is apparently the only year that has these embossed. They say Gibson right there. I don't know. Sounds killer.
I bet.
I mean, it just sounds awesome. And I actually bought this from Chicago Music Exchange, and you know, when I lived there, it had to be. It needed some love, you know. When I took it, I have a really great repair guy, luthier there, Jeff Benj, who's just an incredible. It's been, you know, I miss him a lot, you know, because you know, you find he's just, you know how it is, like finding like your repair person or setup person who's just, he just does setups like you get your guitar right and you're like, man, he just gets it just right, you know, feels good, sounds good, and but he looked at this, he goes, you know, he got this guitar for it to play better. He's like, I got to pull the neck out. Oh, and so he did. So he reset it, and it just plays so good now. I mean, he told me, he goes, I got drunk, and so I pulled this fret out, and then, you know, they do the thing where they steam it. He's like, I just got drunk, and I pulled it out, and it didn't, no wood broke off or anything. So he's like, it was great. And it's awesome. And so that's how, you know, I really fell in love with these P9 or these minis, you know. Such a unique thing.
Yeah, they do sound great.
A lot of guys didn't dig it. You know, you see so many deluxes, you know, that have been routed out for full size.
Yeah.
I regret, like, when I was down in Nashville, when we were doing all of the like till videos and stuff like that in March, I went out to Shiloh Music out in Mount Juliet, and there was one there that was like right around $4,000 for a 72, and I was like, I had just bought a Music Man Wolfgang, or not Wolfgang, the EVH Music Man, like not the Axis, the actual Eddie.
Yeah, it's a Wolfgang. Yeah, it's Wolfgang.
No, I have a Wolfgang, but I got the actual Ernie Ball, like the first one that he used on like the For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge tours and stuff like that. And it's
you got an Ernie Ball one, whatever you call it now. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I got the original one from the 90s, like the actual Eddie one, and I was like, I've spent all the money I can spend on guitars for a while now. As soon as I bought it, and then Travis and I were out at Shiloh, and I was like, shit, like this Les Paul is super nice, but I can't spend. It's like $4,000. I can't spend that money right now. But I regret, because now they're probably like $6,000 or $7,000 for the same guitar.
Oh yeah, Art Reno. Hey Art, sorry I didn't mean to introduce. That's an old friend. Do you remember? I don't. Jeff, you would never met Art Reno, but Art is an awesome repair tech, amp guru, man of the world. It's good to see you, Art. Art is from Lab Sound. He was one of the the Mesa repair tech. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you
Where
off.
in Garden Grove was it?
Oh, I don't know. Garden Grove Boulevard. So it was.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It was in Garden Grove.
Yeah, crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, Art worked at that shop. And yeah, he's a
Amazing.
really good dude. It's good to see you, Art, in print.
Yeah. So we're getting a little long here. And Sean's got an early flight tomorrow. And
What do you mean? You don't want to stay in Winnipeg for Christmas?
oh,
Yeah. Yeah. I'll send that question on to my wife and see.
Yeah.
What she does.
Jeff, you have no idea how cold it is here right now.
It's
It
screaming.
is brutal.
It's
The weather is not fun.
Yeah. That's
I love it.
Yeah. Hoogie's had nothing good to say about the weather since we got him. Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's Canadian.
Fake Canadian. You live like right on the border, bud. God. You're as far south as you can get in this country. Or almost.
I might as well say I'm from Detroit.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Come on now, it isn't minus 40. No, it was only like
Oh,
minus
there he goes.
40
Not in
wind.
Orangewood. Thank you.
There we
Art.
go. Now, thanks, Art. Yeah, I couldn't
Yeah,
remember, man. I knew how to get there, but I knew it was a left turn and a right turn. So
My wife, no one wants to be in Winnipeg at Christmas.
nice.
Correct.
Heidi, yeah.
Sean, you work at Garden Grove Mesa store in 1987?
Late 87. Yeah, it would have been late 87. Yep.
So I have a question for you, Sean. So when I saw you play, and probably must have been, 80, either 88, 89,
Mhm.
you had a big rack,
Oh, yeah.
2 Mesa cabs,
Yeah.
probably 212 cabinets like this side. Are they 412?
No, those were probably the 212s with the
Yeah.
top was open, the bottom was closed and ported.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you had in your rack is like a screen kind of thing with like a
Oh,
graphic EQ.
That was the dumbest thing I ever had. In the
was that like that weird pickup system that existed at that time?
No,
It's just a way for you to analyze it.
It was a graphic EQ, and so you had the rack space. I think it was made by Art, and then you could get this big stupid screen with it to show you your graphic. That's all it was. That's of all the dumb things that I put in my rack, that's top shelf. I just have no idea.
I mean, as a kid, I was very impressed. I was like,
oh
"Dude,
man,
what the fuck?"
yeah. No, this is basically a Fisher Price EQ in my rack system. It was terrible.
So,
Man, a lot of guys were hooked on it though. It went there for a second.
so Lab Sounds, would you guys would build the rigs, right?
Yeah. Well, when I was there, Lab Sound was Brian Swerdfager was building the rigs down there. Yeah, and I kind of learned from him. And then up in Van Nuys was a guy named Mike Ames that was also building rigs. And then eventually I started building. I actually built a few in Van Nuys, early on. But the guy that was really doing most of the really, really nice custom builds was Brian Swerdfager.
Okay.
Yeah. Because I learned pretty much everything from him as far as like just wiring up racks and routing and cable, all that stuff, cable method, all that stuff.
Yeah. Wow. What a time.
I know, right?
What a time.
Just crazy kids with dreams.
Yeah, it's funny because I had my last rig built by David Phillips at LA Sound Design.
Oh yeah, those guys do great work. Yeah,
and very few people are like me and the band were actually building stuff into a rack,
right?
With like heads and rack gear. I walk in there and almost he's just building these beautiful pedal boards.
Yeah,
for people. Yeah, and you're like, oh yeah, this is Eric Johnson's pedal board. I'm like, oh my god, like so cool.
Yeah,
I mean, like,
oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't see these big racks too often. Every once in a while, I threaten to build one, and then I talk myself out of it. I've actually got a close friend that lives in Nashville. Has got a beautiful sounding rack system with a CA preamp, and he's got the old VHT class power.
Yeah.
And so I just go and get my fill and then let it get out of my system and go home.
I got a full size rack in my garage right now, going like, what am I going to do with this thing?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, Yeah, I mean, I think when I finally stopped using racks, I had that was a Chris Craft case. It was a 22 space rack. And then I still had slaved heads on top of it that I would slave along with the preamps that were in it into the power section.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would literally take that to like gigs, like a top 40 gig. You know? Well, and then even taking it to like Violet gigs. It's like, my brother Lonnie would just be looking at me like, what are you doing? He's like, you can't even get that out of your truck. He'll watch me like, kunk, and then like lean it up as best I can. And then usually what'll happen is I try to get it out of the truck and it would slip and fall off the edge of the truck. So now it's laying on the ground. The weight of the harness has pulled half of the cables out. So I know that there's going to be a good half hour of me cursing the sky while I'm trying to get everything plugged back in, but probably backwards.
Well,
Man,
and that's
those
what
days.
I was gonna say. Back then, you were already playing stereo, right?
Oh, absolutely. Everything I did was stereo. And now I never record stereo ever, unless it's specifically asked, because it just doesn't make sense to me. It's like, well, where are you going to put this big stereo mix when you decide the guitar needs to be over here?
I know it sounds so good when you're playing by yourself, though, right?
It's
Or if
glorious.
you're playing live and playing in a trio, like me with the Pumpkins. Sometimes I'm like, oh my gosh, I wish I could play stereo, but I'm like, we have 3 guitar players. Why would you ever need to play stereo? Yeah.
I mean, the only thing I'm thinking about doing, especially with this new pedal board that I have, is doing wet cab, dry cab stuff. So it's not necessarily stereo; it's still summed, but it's wet cab, dry cab. I might do that, but yeah, those rack days, man. I look back and just think, I was crazy. But honestly, there's nothing more glorious than sitting in front of one of those amazing racks, because it sounds like, oh my God. But
those delays, those like the Lexicon delays and the TC, the 2290. And there's never been anything better than that.
No. Yeah. And even the old PCM 42s, and there was just all that stuff was just the old Korg stuff. It was all absolutely glorious, but boy, a lot to move around.
I know. It's funny because most of that stuff, except for like a 2290 or STD 3000 or everything
about the STDs.
We're pretty cheap, but those things are still expensive just because there's just no way to kind of replicate those things. And one of the things I'm like, that I really kind of sometimes want is actually a Eventide H3000.
Oh yeah,
because all the new stuff that they make is incredible, and the plugins are, but they'll tell you we can't really replicate what's going on in those things. Even the most advanced play would require so much DSP that no one could run it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Those things just sound incredible.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. No, it's hard to do. Yeah, it's like it's inarguable how great it sounds, but yeah, it's just good times, man.
Yeah. Do you have any of those like guitars or anything from those days at all still?
I don't. Yeah, everything's kind of, I think that Valley Arts I played the most.
Yeah.
I sold that to Gino. I can't remember his last name. It was so long ago, but I know he's got my Valley Arts. The Steve Lukather is basically a Steve Lukather model Valley Arts. I know he's got that, but yeah, all those other guitars have kind of, made their way into other hands.
Yeah.
I think I sold that rack system. Well, I know who I sold it to, but I'm trying to remember. I think I sold it to him for like $13,000.
Wow.
Just sold 22 space case, 2 4x12s, the 2 heads. And yeah, I sold the whole thing in one piece to a buddy. And then I think he ended up parting it out and probably making more.
But I know I see it. Like if someone says, "Hey, I'll take the whole thing," you're like, "Take it."
Yeah. If I don't have to take that thing apart, And then I think with the Violets, I didn't play Anderson's because like Art's saying he's still got his 88 Anderson Pro-Am. I don't think I had any Andersons. No, I was playing Valley Arts. The Andersons.
No, when I saw you, it was always the Valley Arts.
Yeah. The Andersons came later. Yeah, but yeah, I'm nostalgic. I don't miss those guitars. I'm just kind of nostalgic about them.
Yeah.
The guitars I have now are just, I love them, but I can certainly be nostalgic when it comes to thinking about all my old guitars, all the way down to like Steve Lukather model Ibanez or even the Ibanez, the hollow body 335 that was so killer back in the 80s. And
like like Schofield plays, like
Yeah.
yeah,
AS 200s.
yeah,
those were killer. So but like I said, the collection I have now is I'm so happy, but I am nostalgic about things sometimes.
Yeah. Did your Valley Arch, did that have a Floyd on it? It did,
Oh, yeah.
right?
Yeah. It was the gold hardware.
Mhm.
And that was the first like Floyd guitar I owned. Well, I shouldn't say that because I had a Floyd put on my Steve Lukather Ibanez.
Yeah.
But the Valley Arch was like the first, like, wow.
It was built for that. Yeah.
Custom built Floyd. Yeah. That I was like, whoa.
That stuff back then was so like, did you just, obviously you were working there. So did you just work all the time? Did you every penny you had must have went to buy it?
I blew so much money on.
You could live in a very, very big house at this
point. Maxed out credit cards. I was such a stupid kid. If I had a credit card, I maxed it out in a couple days. It's like, the payments aren't that high.
30% interest isn't that bad.
Yeah,
I can have this today.
Wait, there's interest? Yeah, that's what what I was doing is just, Scotty and I were like sharing an apartment. It wasn't that expensive. I didn't have any other bills. My car was just Plymouth Champ that my parents gave me. So I was just buying everything. And if I didn't have the money, then I'd put it on a credit card like an idiot. But I wouldn't do it any other way. It was just.
The tone was incredible.
Yeah. When they rolled up to, repossess everything I owned, that's what I told them. But the tone
sounds like the best Visa commercial ever.
Yeah.
Go ahead and max it out.
Yeah,
the tone is incredible.
Well, it's just so funny to think about. We're having this conversation about these crazy rigs.
Mm-hmm.
And you think about like, okay, then at the end of the day, I'm hearing this through these whatever in-ear monitors,
mm-hmm.
and I have this humongous, two heads, all this pedals and this whole
mm-hmm.
thing, and you're like, but you don't even get to hear it that way. You hear it through these little earphones. You know what I mean?
Yeah, these little drivers just like connected to your skull.
I know, through wireless, that's like radio frequency, even. And you were like arguing about our tone and this and then. And you're like, it's going through this.
Yeah, don't get me started on wireless. That was like misery for me. I finally got stuff to work, but all that. That's the thing.
I've actually never used wireless guitar. I was just talking about the in-ear pack, having to deal with like hearing.
Oh, even that, sure. Yeah, but no, the wireless thing that screwed me up because it was just more buffering, weird level things, weird anomalies, weird harmonic distortion, and
sure.
Don't get me going on that. I know it's a necessary evil. I'm not slagging on wireless. I know it works, but yeah, Daddy did not like that.
Speaking of all of the like rack systems and like the old rig stuff, I want anybody who's in the comment section to head over if you've got pictures of any like old ridiculous rigs that you used to have. Throw them up in the Facebook Revv community page.
Yeah, Derek, has anybody ever asked Revv to make a preamp?
Yes, many times.
Yeah.
And somebody else asked that we missed the comment before. I don't know if they're still here, but somebody asked if there's going to be a synergy module. And I really love that system. Like I like the same opinion that you had. I've never owned it. I never owned the Randall system. I went searching for Randall or Ignator systems once I saw all of the modules that Antonin was doing.
Yeah.
And I could never find any that weren't like in need of slight repair. Like every time I saw one, I'm like, man, this is terrible.
Yeah, they weren't super robust. Like the synergy stuff is way more solid.
So we've been talking to boutique amps about that, and we know Avi and all of those guys over there, and we're all big fans of pretty much everything that they do. Most people can see behind the wall that we're not precious about our amps versus other amps. We kind of love everything. So eventually there will be a synergy module. It's just a matter of when we have time for design and when they have time for kind of their end on it. So it'll eventually happen. Cool. We get asked about that. We get asked about rack mount amps. We get asked about
floor amps.
Floor amps are that's the bigger one now, where it's like, can you build me a generator 120 that's this big and fits on my pedal board? And yeah,
No.
the answer is absolutely not.
Yeah.
But you know,
But thanks for the question.
yeah. But then Dan's sitting at home being like, I wonder if I could build
I
a generator
know.
120 that's this big and fits on the floor.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's there's been lots of people ask about preamps. I really, we get the other one that gets me, and I'm sure somebody who's watching is going to say I'm an asshole for saying this, but like, we get the bass amp request all the time. Like, are you guys going to build a bass amp? And I'm like, but who wants to haul around like a 100-pound bass head that's got like, yeah, Hoogie is the only person, mostly because he has
Hoogie's
stage hands to load and unload his truck. That's why he's saying he wants to do it. But like, yeah, like, you know, 400-watt bass heads that weigh 150 pounds.
Yeah, I mean the Mesa 400-watt heads were like 75 pounds. I remember selling tons, like scads of them, but they were really, really heavy.
And like $600 to retube now.
Well, yeah, especially these days. Yeah.
Like, so I just, there's things like that I feel a lot of people are really nostalgic about that gear and wish that modern versions of that gear existed, because they want to get some kind of modern voicing and tones, but go back to using that. Because I mean, the MP1s are a great example of that, right? Like those, a year and a half ago, you could have bought an MP1 used on Craigslist up here for like $250, $300. Now they're $800.
Yep.
And like everybody is going back to wanting to get a bunch of that stuff. And it's
Kyle. Bassists love Pickguards.
Yeah. So
yeah.
So
I get it, but you know, I was just asking because I know I was just curious, but even though I just don't see, like myself, I was like, I don't want to use a preamp, power amp type of system anymore, just because there's just not enough options.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like even in 1995, there was at least quite a few options. You know, but now there's just not for like power amps and, you know, whatever.
Yeah, it's true.
It seems like there's two camps, right? Like there's people who want everything to be as compact and as lightweight as possible now, which is the major trend, right? Like give me the most flyable solution on my pedal board. I mean, that was the thought process behind doing the design on the D20 and the G20 was, let's make something that we can send direct to front of house, and let's make it as small and as light as we possibly can so that it's easily travelable. But then there's another camp who, you know, we've had guys ask us to build, you know, stereo generator 120, like generator 120s with stereo outputs. And I'm like, no, like absolutely not. Can I tell that story without getting in trouble about, like, do you think?
Right. It's just a story. You know?
So Neil Schon asked us, he was using Mark II generator 120s for a bit. And he said what he really wanted was, he wanted 100-watt stereo version of the 120 that he could actually run 6L6s on one side and EL34s on the other. And he's like, I think this would be a huge seller. And I was like, it'll weigh 100 pounds. Literally no one besides you or somebody like your size, like not fame wise, but you know what I mean? Like,
that has roadies and like that to move the stuff around. Yeah.
I'm like, no one will buy this product. So like, there's no way, it'll take way too long to design, and it's and the transformers will be massive. And yes, and Jimmy Ray has a great point, and it'll cost $4,000 or $5,000 really per head. Yeah. So I said no to Neil right away, which was so painful because I love Journey and love Neil Schon.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, this is the end of of Neil playing our stuff. And the best story I have about this, though, is that Shawn and I were doing Sweetwater Gear Fest, and Friedman comes up to talk to us, and we're telling him this story. And he's like, you said no to that? And I was like, yeah. I'm like, it's a crazy idea. Like, I don't know who would buy it. And he's like, I built it. He's like, I didn't do 100 watts. I did 50 watts a sign. But Neil told us that you guys were going to build it for him. So we built him a prototype of it because he thought that we were going to build it.
Perfect. And I haven't seen it come out, right?
Yeah, exactly. and now he's playing 5153. So
It's funny because actually when I used that Randall modular system, Randall made a matching power amp that was 50 watts per side. And you could actually choose, you could actually put different, types of tubes on each side.
Mhm.
yeah,
And so you could, through MIDI switching, you could either have both sides on, or I think you could send the other side to one cabinet. And so for if your clean module, if it was like a Fender thing, you wanted to go to 6L6s, it could go to the 6L6 side to your cabinet, or it could go to the EL34 side, for if you have like more of a Marshall type of thing. So it actually kind of had some of that capability,
nice.
Yeah.
There.
It's just, but yeah, because he can go hunt down one of those. I got one. I'll sell him. I'll sell it to him.
Yeah.
Yeah, if Neil's watching this tonight, Neil.
It will not be inexpensive, my friend, but I will sell it to you. I will part.
Yeah. Anthony, did the Road King actually do that, or did the Road King just have the option to select the power section?
Yeah, I thought you couldn't like foot switch between the two, but I thought you could.
But it also wasn't stereo output.
No.
Like it was either 6L6 or EL34.
Right,
you could just choose which tube complement you were using, I think.
Yeah, as far as I can tell. Yeah.
I don't remember though, but I do remember the Road King, like the Road King V1 or version 1 or whatever, sounded absolutely amazing. Mm-hmm. And I wanted one, but they were $4,000 up here. And I was like, nope, no, can't do that. So, yeah.
Yep.
That's my funny story for the night.
Yeah. Art says yes, so maybe it's true. Art would know.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, he would totally know.
The foot switch was huge. Yes. It was massive. I remember that. No one wants to know his favorite Rush song, Luke.
Nice. Probably Limelight or something.
You guys have any other questions for us? Like I said, we're getting a little bit long here, and it's Yep. Sean's getting up early.
Sean,
yeah. I keep using that excuse. I'm like,
Sean's getting up
I'm
early.
not saying that
I
I
am
have
getting
to,
up early, but
that Manny and I have to go to a studio yet tonight to
you guys gotta
set
go.
up to do 2 notes captures.
Yeah.
Plus, you're gonna the thought, Sean, you have to go outside to get to a car,
Oh yeah.
Sean's like, let's go. We got another hour. At least we can go. If we go till I have to get to the airport.
Right.
How cold is it out there right now?
Fahrenheit? It's probably what do you think, Huey? Like 13 below?
Oh, no way. Wow. Negatives.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
This morning it was -15.
-15.
But it was a real feel of -9.
But the real feel was -9, so that's weird, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been well below 0 Fahrenheit.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
oh my
a little warmer.
gosh.
Right now it's only -7 with scattered flurries.
Yeah, it's balmy now. It's
Mine
-7.
says -30.
Shorts weather.
Yeah, they're talking Fahrenheit.
We're in Fahrenheit.
They're talking American.
Yeah, we're talking in
I see.
in a language that's not grown up.
Yeah. How many eagles to freedom is it, Sean?
Yeah, Eagles over.
Yeah, we'll figure that out.
Oh god.
What are we capturing? The 6x12. Yes, we are. So, and the vertical 2x12. We hope. Yeah. I guess we probably shouldn't tell everybody everything new that we're ever working on.
Yeah.
Like,
no surprises then.
No, there's not. Like, you watch the live stream and we're like, hey, we have a new amp that it's not going to come out for 8 months, but you know what? You can hear it.
Check it out.
Like,
Yeah.
Here's where we're at. I have a different theory about that versus I think a lot of other companies. I don't think anybody's waiting with bated breath for the new thing that we come out with that that we have to surprise everybody with it. You know what I mean? I feel like if you're into what we do, you'll just wait and see. Although I will say that there's 2 new amps coming that you're going to want to check out.
Yeah, you
Jeff.
want to check them out, Jeff.
So
Yeah.
that'll come out sometime next year.
Awesome.
Whenever we feel like putting it out. That's when we get it. Not a minute sooner.
You
No.
will know when you know.
When Sean says we can release it.
When I say,
that's when we're going to do it.
I will say it.
You know what? Hey, Scotty, can you run and grab me? Do you know where the little head shell thing is
Oh,
for the D20? Do you know where it is? Are you sure you do? It's on the wood shop. It's over in there. You guys want to see something that we're messing around with here? I bet you Jeff will like it.
I want one.
Yeah. Question for Jeff: was your favorite guitar speaker?
All things considered, I am a tried and true vintage 30 user, just because like Shawn, it just works. Especially using multi-channel head.
Yep.
Where you got to go from crystal clean to the highest gain. I just feel like it does all really well and kind of consistent. While I certainly like other speakers for other types of things, they don't work for everything. So I feel like the vintage 30 has become the industry standard in that way, I think, for a reason.
Yeah, for sure.
Everybody say hi to Hoogie.
Hoogie.
Hoogie on the road. So check this out. We decided to make this for fun. We don't know if we'll make real ones. What do you guys think, though? Do you like it?
So instead of being the aluminum head, we're going to do the Tolex on the D20.
Yeah, and it's got like grill cloth on the front instead of, it's fancy pants.
It's cool. Looks
it does
great.
look really, it came out really nice. Yeah,
very Bogner-esque. There's
you'll be able to, if you made
here.
There he is,
Drew.
If you made those, would you be able to get those in custom Tolex colors too? That's what.
Do you want to go get the green one?
Yeah, you can pretty much do whatever you want.
Someone want to get the green one?
Drew is a really great amp builder himself. I don't know if you know that. And so he's got his own amp company, Fobstar, and he built me an amp and it has zebra and pink Tolex because I dared him, and so one day this amp shows up at my house, and it's just incredible.
Nice, that's awesome.
It is the most 80s amp. I love it.
Drew was here with Hoogie when Shinedown was here in August, I think it was, right?
July, I think.
July?
Sometime in there.
July. You're right. And we got to hang out with him and do like a little Gear and Beer interview thing with him. It was a ton of fun. And I haven't tried any of his amps, but I would love to. And he's a killer dude. Do you want to be Vanna White for us there, Hoog, and just show everybody? Oh, yeah.
Ooh.
Rip in behind. Look, see, we did one with like, it's got a black front, but it's got green.
Oh, that's cool. That's really cool.
Custom Tolex.
Hoogie kind of matches your shirt.
Yeah.
It does kind of work. It's like a pastel thing.
Yeah. So
at least the way it looks on this.
We don't know for sure if we're going to do them. We just thought some people don't like the little metal lid. Yeah. And we were like, all right, maybe we'll try that then.
I like it. I think it's cool.
Yeah. Nicely done. Thanks, Hoogie.
Classy.
So which is your one last question for you? And then I promise I'm actually going to wrap this up. You have all of the G series pedals, right?
I do.
Which one of them is your favorite?
It was funny because I was out in the garage today and like going, okay, I got to organize this, and I found all these pedal boards that I'm like, I'm going to build a pedal board, and so I thought about that today because I'm like, well, I want to build a board that has all these Revv pedals on them. And which ones do I want? I said, I think I got to have all three because it's so cool because it's like really kind of having the amp on a board. But I think my favorite is the purple. That's my go-to.
G3.
That's the G3. That's my go-to.
Okay, awesome. So Sammy has picked a winner from our contest tonight, which was if you could name which band.
Which is apropos then.
If you can name the band I was fired from.
Which is perfect. Because it's the Violet Burning, and you're going to win the purple pedal. And the winner is from Instagram. He chose across all of the platforms, and it's Jay Chiller. I don't know.
We'll find
so anyway, we're going to find you. But thanks everybody for checking it out. I don't know if you guys. He's a Newfie from Newfoundland.
Oh, nice.
Nice.
Yeah.
Keep it in the family there then. Right?
Yeah. So you're winning the G3, buddy.
Yeah.
Listen here, buddy. You got yourself a G3 coming, all right? So
guy.
Yeah, guy. Listen here, guy. The Violet Burning. What? Who changed it? Who's on?
What?
There's a Violet Burning. Berlin. No, a Violet Burning YouTube account.
I don't know.
Could be.
That wouldn't surprise me.
No, Michael. He still has the band.
Does he?
Yeah.
I haven't talked to Mike since I quit. Actually, so yeah. I don't know.
Yeah,
Okay.
I just saw him a couple months ago in Boston.
right on.
He lives in Boston, and so we hung out. I mean, he's just a dear friend.
Yeah, is he doing okay?
Great. He's doing, yeah.
Good.
He's doing great. And, he's totally gear obsessed still. He has a bunch of cool stuff. So we're always just, talking about guitars and pedals and amps and whatnot. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great, man. Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. Well, I think we're going to call it there.
Yeah.
So Jeff, thank you so much for joining us.
I could hang out. I mean, this is what I would just be doing anyway. Talking to somebody about these things.
Right.
Finding somebody like who wants to talk about.
Right. No, but it was really sweet of you to do this, Jeff. Thank you, man.
No, I love it. I'm like I said, it means a lot. I mean, like whatever gear, their tools, whatever, but it actually, means a lot. Like, I feel like it's, was a very nice time when, like I said, I had reached out about, trying to try ahead. And then when you return, when it was like, hey, I'm talking to you about it, I was like, wow, okay, that's a good sign. So I think this is going to be a good thing.
Yeah. Right on. Yeah. Well, it's an excuse to reconnect too, man. I hadn't talked to you.
Yeah. So awesome.
That's been great too. Yeah. Reminisce.
Yeah. So awesome.
Yeah.
So I have to do all the housekeeping things. So make sure you like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, to all of our socials. Join the Revv community. Next week is Dan and I are on for the announcement for the 12 Days of Christmas because it's Christmas in between then. So so watch all the socials and all that stuff, and make sure you get entered to win some stuff. People can win. I don't know if you've seen the posts, Jeff, but they can win pedals and D20s and G20s and stuff like that. So definitely keep an eye out for that. Dan and I'll be on with Sammy next week. And everybody have a great Christmas. And a safe Christmas, and we'll see you guys next week.
Yeah. Merry Christmas, everybody.
Yeah. Thanks again.
Yep.
Cheers.
Thanks, Jeff.
Bye.